think of my dad at Christmas. My dad loved Christmas. He loved picking out the tree, and usually it was too tall for the ceiling, which would make him stomp to the garage to get something to cut the tree off at the top, usually hollering, "God damn it, son of a bitch, happy fucking holidays." Dad loved the ornaments, a few from his childhood. One was actually a little baby rattle, little round wooden human form. A few from the days of still being married to my mom, when the two of them would make ornaments out of the top of tin cans. And then a few we would have just bought at Pier 1, and the tags would still be on them. And he'd actually spent a surprising amount on those ornaments. My dad rarely spent much money on anything. His furniture was from Goodwill. He drove a 15-year-old Toyota that smelled like rotten peanuts. His general anti-consumerism came from his being a Marxist or a Leninist. It depended. And also, he had a hard time giving. My mom's very small child support checks came in the mail, and they were often unsigned. He'd forgotten to sign them. Or he wrote one amount in the little box on the right and then wrote out a different amount, so she had to send them back, say, "Dick, could you just get the two things lined up?" So he did have a hard time giving. My dad lived in New Jersey, and my mom lived in Illinois, and mostly I lived with her. Like I said, my dad loved Christmas, and it was one of the few times a year he would spend some money, and very thoughtfully on others, on my stepmother when she was my stepmother, and then on me and on the girlfriends when they were girlfriends. I was with Dad every other Christmas from the time I was 8 when my parents got divorced. The ritual began with Handel's Messiah, blasting on the stereo. This was about Handel, not about Christianity. Dad was an atheist or a Buddhist. I couldn't tell which because it changed every couple of weeks. The posters of Castro and Russian revolutionary art and Tolstoy were constants on the wall, but the Buddha, he came and went. So every year, Handel is on the stereo, and my dad would like to sing along. And there's a lyric, "We like sheep." We, like sheep. We are followers, in other words. But he'd bellow out those lyrics, marching into the attic to get some ornaments, and he would say, "We like sheep." Here, get it? We like sheep. Not we, like sheep, but we like sheep. I didn't get it right away, but I laughed. I was the only child of Richard Wasson, Rutgers English professor, a man whose mind buzzed from Bernard Shaw's socialism to Kierkegaard's truth as subjectivity to U.S. imperialism in Central America. I needed to get what Dad got, and I needed to nod intently. When I was 14, I made the mistake of telling him that I was going to try out to be a cheerleader, and I thought that he was going to hit me for my ordinariness. He didn't, but a few years later, he did chase me with his fist raised, cursing me, but I outran him. During my childhood Christmases with Dad, we'd lay the ornaments out on the couch and study them for a while, and he'd be sucking hard on a cigarette, and he'd say, "You go first, Kier." I would usually choose that baby rattle and put it up close to the top. My dad was tall, handsome, loud, and frightening, and picturing him as a baby was next to impossible. But the way he'd look at that rattle on the tree, swinging a little, made me realize he once was a little person. I remember a Christmas about 1976 when I was around 15. He bought me a shearling coat. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. He told me he'd made some money on the gold market, and I didn't bring up how that fit with the Marxism. Just let that go. He was still drinking then, and there were several glasses of whiskey around the house, and he kept putting the cigarettes out in the poinsettia plants. Another Christmas I remember was when I was in graduate school much later, and I had a boyfriend, Bill, and the three of us gathered at his house to do a little Christmas decorating. The Messiah was blaring, the Hallelujah chorus, and Dad offered my boyfriend, Bill, a beer, which was extremely sweet because he hadn't had a drink in 5 years, and he bought this beer just for Bill. So Bill's sitting in a chair, and I'm hovering around the ornaments, remembering all those little objects, the little cars and the birds and the set of musical instruments. Those are my dad's favorite. And then the shiny fruit with the frosty snow on. Those are my favorites. So Dad and I are picking and choosing and doing our tree dance. It's his turn. It's my turn to put up an ornament. And about a quarter of the way through, I could see Dad getting upset and getting rigid with annoyance. And I wondered what part of the dance I had done wrong. Had I hung an ornament that was his? So Dad's looking at Bill, and Bill is obliviously sipping his beer, enjoying himself. "Are you going to just sit there?" my dad asked. Bill blinked hard. I was just enjoying myself. I didn't realize. Bill looked at me, and I didn't even look back. "We are decorating the goddamn Christmas tree. Are you going to decorate the goddamn Christmas tree, Bill?" Bill did, in fact, decorate the goddamn Christmas tree with us. And by the end, Dad was singing "We Like Sheep" and laughing at his own joke. So the last Christmas I shared with my dad, which was a few years before he died, I was newly divorced, and I had my son, who was about 3, with me, and Dad was staying at a hotel, and he came over for Christmas Eve. And my son, Noah, was a little bit sick. He had a little flu, but he was very happily playing with Grandpa while I made dinner. And then we were halfway through dinner, and Noah got diarrhea. So I got up to get him out of the high chair and into the other room, and I changed his diaper and brought him back, and Noah was whining, and he kept whining. And I went to reach him to get out of the high chair again and take him in the other room. And Dad stood up and threw his napkin on the table, and his eyes were bulging and his hands were on his hips. "Jesus, Kirsten, don't indulge him. He's going to be a spoiled brat. For Christ's sake, what kind of a mother are you?" I didn't think that criticism was fair or polite. I said, "Don't talk to me that way. I want you to leave. We'll see you tomorrow morning." Dad looked shocked. I had never talked to him like that before. I handed him his coat. "Kir, honey, please." "What?" I asked, thinking that I would probably cave if he apologized, but he didn't. At that point, he said, "Let's have a hug. I need a hug." He was crying now, his shoulders limp, his head down. I put my arms around him in a thin embrace. "I'll see you in the morning, Dad." In the morning, we sang "We Like Sheep," and we opened presents. And that was the last Christmas I had with my dad. I always think of my dad at Christmas because it was his favorite holiday, and also because he died a week before his favorite holiday. So 2 years after that one where Noah was sick, he died. A few days after his fatal heart attack, I went to the mailbox, and there was a big package of gifts from him, which he'd sent, obviously, before he died. There were some pretty little things for me, a cashmere scarf and a hand-carved Noah's Ark for Noah. And that year I played the Messiah, and I taught Noah to listen for the "We Like Sheep" part. "We like sheep!" he sang out. We do. We like sheep, Mom. In his will, Dad specified that I was to inherit all the ornaments. And so, in the spirit of the season, I have some little ornaments here that are not my family's. They're just, I'm not giving away my inheritance, okay? But they're wooden, they're cute, and I would like, in the spirit of the season, to pass around this box of ornaments to you and wish you a happy fucking holiday.